I think I'll call us. Welcome to the November meeting of the Human Relations Board, and we will get started with roll call.
Okay, I will take roll. Leanna Wesley. Kiona Ackley. You had mentioned she's going to be
She
late.
said she's gonna be, no, she said she's gonna be on Zoom. She didn't mention being late, but I
Okay.
expect her to come in anytime.
Okay. Charles Asher.
Here.
Jennifer Metzger. Donald Woodward. Ocean.
Attending remotely from Kalamazoo.
Bonica Herring. Jeffrey Cotton. Derek Freeman.
Present. At home in Battle Creek. Sorry.
It's okay. Joe Hooper, Pastor Hooper. Deanna Spencer. Dina.
Yep, she's not here yet. She often arrives late.
Yep. Whitney Wardell. Kathy Zenda Wilson.
Present.
Josita Todd.
Present.
Commissioner Ballard. And Rebecca Fleury.
Present remotely from Battle Creek.
All right. Thank you. Do we have one?
We do not.
Fiona's here.
Kiona is here. Now
I
we do.
am here, yes. Kiona Ackley joining remotely from Battle Creek.
Thank you, Kiona.
Thank you, Vice Chair. That puts us at what we need to actually get some business done.
Yes.
So thank you. I want to welcome Josita again, our second time around. Thank you for coming back. We didn't scare you off the first time. I know there's enough people here. So welcome. We're really grateful to have you join us. I'd like to move for or ask for approval of the minutes, and these will be minutes from the September 20th meeting.
I, Kiona, motion to approve the minutes from the September 20th, 2023 meeting.
Derek seconds.
Okay, we've got a movement second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. Opposed, same. All right, the minutes are approved. Do we have any communications?
No. Becca, that
Okay.
was Alicia. She does not have any.
Oh, yeah. All right, we're good. Yeah, this is, thank you for sitting in for her. And I get that I'll be asking things that I should probably let you know.
This could be new to me again, so.
We have the committee reports because we haven't had any meetings in between, so we're good on that. Old business, are there any updates to the Community Oversight Board that the group needs to be aware of?
Yes.
Oh, yay.
Yay.
Okay.
Okay. So we did send out this morning an updated draft of the recommendation to amend chapter 286 of the Battle Creek Code of Ordinances. I'll just be as brief as I can be. The last time that we discussed this at the HRB, Kathy, as you had presented, when this discussion around a community oversight board began, the DEI office was not in place. And now that it is, it provided a great opportunity to for the DEI office to help steward this process, as would have originally been the process if it had been in place. And so in doing so, I met with Rebecca and we talked about what would that process have looked like. And I talked about utilizing a task force to do some due diligence. And we talked about that here at the HRB. And then coming out of that meeting, the feedback from that meeting and a subsequent conversation with the city manager, the chief of police, and the city attorney, we came to the conclusion that a task force would be duplicative of the efforts that had already taken place. There had been a lot of groundwork done by both the Human Relations Board and the NAACP. We thought that there were some aspects that we could move forward with, which I will present here today. I will also say, subsequent to that conversation, I had an opportunity to attend the NACO, the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, their annual conference 2 weeks ago. It was a 5-day conference that was jam-packed with information. It was very, very timely because it provided a great deal of context for me in terms of this whole world of oversight boards, and just really immersed me in that environment. It started out with Civilian Oversight 101. So we did a deep dive into the history and principles and different models, et cetera. And just the conference had topics to cover every aspect of community oversight boards that you could imagine, including several sessions that featured panelists that were impacted families. So just a wealth of information. What that really helped to do in terms of boosting my knowledge, but also helping me understand the training that will be needed for a community oversight board. So the timing couldn't have been better. So coming out of that experience, I just had a few more recommendations that I was able to have conversations about with the city manager and chief of police. And so what you have in front of you is in terms of the purpose, based on my observations and what transpired at the workshop with the city commissioners, there seemed to be a consensus around the purpose for the Community Oversight Board based on all of the legwork that had been done. And the functions and the authority reflect a review-focused model for community oversight. I did have some recommendations, so I'm just gonna briefly walk through because you did just get this morning. Those haven't changed, those have been tweaked just a little bit. Based on the feedback coming out of the city commission workshop around membership, we did move that to 9 members, and that's reflected there in the bullet points of who would comprise those 9 members. That does include 2 alternates. In terms of the terms, we thought it was important because there will be a significant amount of investment in training and knowledge built over time that there shouldn't be short terms. So we are recommending 3-year terms and the ability to serve 2 consecutive 3-year terms. The first year would be staggered so that everyone isn't going off at the same time. And that a board member, after going off for 1 full year, would be eligible to serve 1 additional term for a total of 9 years. And there would be 2 officers, a chairperson and a vice chairperson. The meetings would be determined by the Community Oversight Board, but we are recommending that it should be at a minimum quarterly and at a maximum monthly. And that the Community Oversight Board would provide an annual report each year. I did include some recommendations, which are also outlined here. Pending approval of this amendment, the DEI office would help execute next steps, which would include member applicant recruitment and community education, and then coordination of the training for the new board members. It is the recommendation of the DEI office that the Community Oversight Board develop its bylaws, and that they also, and this is after they have been trained, so they have that knowledge, and that they also can review, I caught this typo just here right before this meeting. It was originally reconsideration process, blah, blah, blah. I shortened it to functions. So they would review the functions that are listed here to determine if they had any recommended edits. And those, both the bylaws and any edits to the functions, would go back to the commission for approval. And that they would also nominate their board officers. In addition, the DEI office will serve the Community Oversight Board as staff liaison, help develop the budget if applicable, coordinate orientation of training of all new members, support in community outreach and education, and provide technical assistance with the compilation of their annual report. In terms of training, There is the piece that will come from consultants with expertise in civilian oversight boards. And then there's the piece that will come from the city and law enforcement as well. And any other trainings that would be recommended by the consultant, the police chief, and the DEI office. And then the last page is the timeline, which is a tentative timeline. We have scheduled a workshop with the City Commission for December 5th at 5:30 to give an update of the status and present this updated draft. If that all goes well, then we would look to move forward on the December 19th City Commission meeting with a resolution proposal to actually go forward with amending Chapter 286. We are then recommending a 2-month period to do applicant recruitment and community education around this new board. And then in March, the board members would be selected, and again, that would go before the City Commission for approval of those placements. And the training would take place in April, and they would have their first official meeting in May. That is a quick overview. I will say some other insights gleaned from the conference is that community oversight boards are moving from a reactive stance to more proactive. So really, instead of occurring out of a high profile incident, being more proactive in terms of, identifying any potential problems or seeking to build partnerships with law enforcement and creating bridges between law enforcement and the community. So that's the direction that community oversight boards are moving toward as it continues to evolve. They stress the importance of community education, and that the oversight board establish community trust and be seen as legitimate, and also establish mutual respect with law enforcement. The other piece is that I just want to say is this is an important board, not to say it's more important than any other board or commission, but there will be a significant amount of time and resources invested into training this board. And so it is imperative that those that are selected really commit to this process. And that includes consistent attendance, not just for quorum, but because you're going to build your knowledge the more you have experience in this work. Yeah, so I think that's it. I would pause and see if Chief Bagley or City Manager Flory have anything they want to add.
No, I just want to say, Kim, you've done an excellent job. Your diligence and the research and just the overall effort in the conversations and the phone calls and the emails. Thank you. Thank you for your diligence here. This is extremely important. And I think where we have arrived is perfect. And I just want to say thank you. Other than that, I have no other comments. I think this is a good thing, and it will be great for this community and great for the city.
Thank you.
I will add, I will tell you, when Kimberly came to me and presented, hey, I think we need to pause, rethink, I had that, the heart palpitation, because you're like, okay, all of this work has gone into this point, but what she's saying makes sense. And I'm thinking, perspective, it feels uncomfortable, but yet sometimes this work is uncomfortable. And so I echo some of the things that Chief Bagley said. As hard as it was the right thing for the DEI office to take a look at what we've done to this point, and look at it with a different lens. And I think this point where we are right now, it surpassed my expectations. And I have to credit Kimberly for that. No, we didn't plan for this to fall right on the NACOL conference, but when she brought it to me, I'm thinking, yep, this is how it's supposed to happen. There's a lot of information that she had to digest over that week. I remember talking to her during that week, and I know she was on information overload. And when she came back, she just took thoughtful time to look at where we are, presently, look at what the city commissioners were asking for and the community was asking for, and how do we find the right place to start? And what do we do at this particular point in time? And I couldn't be happier with this draft. I look forward to having that discussion with the commissioners on December 5th. I hope, please know, any of you that would like to join that workshop, you're certainly more than welcome. And I appreciate all of the HRB time too, because, you had a subcommittee who made recommendations to my office and was presented to the commission. And sometimes things just the timelines do not unfold like we think. In this particular case, I think it's unfolding exactly how it's supposed to. So thank you, Kimberly. And thank you to all of the HRB.
Thank you, Kimberly. I want to just appreciate that you gave some thought. The task force would have been redundant at that point, and just lifting up all the work that this group has done. I'm curious about a couple things, and I want to open it up for other questions and discussion. Did you learn anything at NACOL, or did you have any thoughts about the selection process itself? That once we get the applications, what does that look like for us to decide, us being a general term, not us necessarily, but who's going to review those and make decisions?
So it varied across the board. There are some oversight boards that they have certain organizations that have to be represented on that board. So organizations nominate members. There are some that are appointed by the city commission or the mayor. And there are some that it's a total volunteer application process. So it was really all over the board. And I would try to ask, do you think this is, the way you're doing it? Do you think this is a great way? And I just got that it was right for their community. And that's one of the things that a trainer stressed to me, because I told him this is a lot to digest. And he said, I know it's overwhelming, but don't feel like you have to duplicate something another community is doing. Make sure that whatever Battle Creek does is right for Battle Creek, which was very helpful to calm me down. So the selection process, it's our recommendation that it is consistent with every other board or commission, and that is an application process. And then that is reviewed by the review committee. And they make those selections for recommendations that go to the city commission. I do think that this needs to be a diverse board in all the facets of that word, not just in identities, but in terms of education, experience, occupations. I think to the extent that we can, we may want to develop some loose criteria, but right now, the recommendation is that it follows the process that every other board and commission does.
So just a follow-up to that, then it would feel like we would need some thoughtful outreach or training for the review committee. I'm not Rebecca, can you share who serves on that review committee, or somebody from the city specifically? I know I've been asked to come as HRB chair.
Yep.
If we do an application review. So does that group change, or what is the makeup
No,
of
it doesn't change. So the review committee was established by the commission when you were on the commission, Kathy. It consists of the mayor, the vice mayor, and the city manager. And then depending on which committees are being considered, it is the chair of that board or committee and the staff liaison.
Okay. So then, given that this is a new one, who else would sit in, or would it just be the three of you?
Well, it's funny, we just had a similar instance with the Transportation Authority. So then it's usually just the mayor, the vice mayor, and the city manager, and then staff liaison here would be Kimberly, and then anyone else that would be pertinent to that particular discussion.
Other comments or questions?
Sorry, Chuck, let me just say one thing. In the instance of like the Transportation Authority, there was a planning committee that was meeting between the city, the county and transportation service providers. So in that instance, as I share, because that was a new one, those recommendations came from that planning group. So just, again, I think this is slightly different and yet it has similarities. It's because it's something that doesn't exist right now. So thanks. Sorry to interrupt, Chuck.
Oh, that's fine. I just got two minor things I noticed, and they're kind of procedural. You mentioned the meetings. And as I read this line, which I assume is gonna, if it's approved, will be an ordinance. The COB shall meet quarterly at a minimum or once per month maximum to be determined by the COB. Does that little caveat, once per month maximum, does that tie their hands? And then, like, if something is really going on that's serious, they may want to meet more than once a month. See what I'm saying? I think personally, I think if you just took that out and just the minimum of quarterly, and then to be determined by the COB.
I'm definitely comfortable with that.
That'd give them a lot of flexibility. The other thing, the board makeup, I'm pretty happy with the board makeup, and I'm glad that there's 9 members, and I agree with all the conversation about it being, the importance of diversity. But I thought we'd talked about some representation of some of the districts outside of the city that are served by the city police. And I'm talking specifically Bedford Township. Do we think they should have a member on this board?
That I would have to
That might be a
defer to.
Yeah, that might be more of a legal question, but, and that's the only two things that
Okay.
other than very nice work on this, I think.
Would that be something that we would want to talk with the city attorney about?
Chief Bagley, I mean, I think it's a fair question to ask. Because we certainly have boards and commissions that are established that have members that aren't residents of the city, but they have a business interest, property interest, something of that nature, or it's required as part of an enabling state legislation. So that would have to be it would be a city attorney question if it makes sense. Again, Chief Bagley, I don't know as far as the contract with Bedford Township. Where we are in that.
Sure. Yeah. So as far as when that contract comes back up, we've got some time on that. I wouldn't be opposed for them to have representation. I think number one is just because, and if they didn't, it wouldn't mean that they would not be able to participate in the process. I think it's going to be critical about the who that are participating on the board. Rather than the where. So while I am in very well, maybe you will get some applicants reviewed from Bedford, and by all means, they should be considered. And we do provide contractual police services. I would not be opposed to that at all. But if in the case that they're not, or if they don't have representation per se, then they certainly would be able to participate in any process of the COB.
I suppose what you could do is, because we have 2 alternate members, you could, leaving it at 9, you could move the 4 residents of the city of Battle Creek, 1 resident of Bedford Township, but you'd have to have a caveat as long as the city holds that contract, because if anything ever changed with that relationship, then, we should have language that says, okay, then they aren't represented on the board of the review board.
No, that's a good point, Rebecca. Thank you.
That's it.
Other comments?
I just had a couple questions, and mainly because I'm new.
Yes.
How did we get to this point? Okay, without going into a lot of history, but was there a situation that occurred that we decided that we needed to have some type of oversight for the police department?
Yeah, I'll let.
And why just the police department? Why not oversight in terms of any CRC?
Yeah, so I'll let Rebecca fill in some of the gaps, but I'll give my best go at this. So the NAACP have been working with many community groups who, in light of what was going on after the George Floyd
Okay.
killing. It was like, what are we doing locally to make sure that we are getting ahead of that? So we're not responding to a particular incident. We do know that there is a need for something like this. They did their own research and developed a paper that was submitted, or a proposal, I suppose is how they presented it to the city. The city then asked the Human Relations Board to review it and say, we would like this to go to commission, but we want you to look at it first and see, is this what we need? What we learned, I think what the feedback initially from the HRB was, there hasn't been enough community input on this proposal. We really need to hear from the community about what they want. There was a lot of organizational representation in the proposal that was submitted, and that was good, but we didn't feel like it was sufficient. So we conducted a survey. I can't remember the number of responses we got. Chris Lucier did an incredible job analyzing the data for us and then bringing it in and saying, here's what we're hearing. Overwhelmingly, there was support from the community for this. What it looked like differed based on who was responding. So there's been a lot of debate and very animated conversations about what this would look like, what role the city could or should play. Should this be, the way it was positioned in the NAACP proposal was that it would be a separate organization. It would be a separate entity altogether. There's all sorts of challenges with that. And that was one of the things structurally that we had, the feedback we provided is that access to the data you would need, this really needs to be in partnership with the city. So several of us, we had a work group that formed, we did a bunch of research, we brought our recommendations back to this group. In the midst of all of that, we held a workshop with the commission to get feedback. That was really helpful. I can't even remember the timeline on that. And in the midst of all that, then the DEI office came into being. And so then what you hear from Kimberly is that we are in a different position. Had that existed before, that's probably where it would have gone initially, right? I appreciate that they're acknowledging all the work that got us to this date. I don't think there's any right answer with this. I think it's what is okay for us right now. And I think what I feel after years of now looking at this is that we have to get started and then see what might need to be tweaked, right? Like, does this work for us? With an ordinance though, and I want to thank Chuck because he was the one who found an ordinance that existed that if it's updated, gives us the authority to do this without there being entirely new body of work. So it's been a long,
it's
story,
obvious with the amount of work and detail that's been put into it that you guys have really. How many CRCs do you normally get a year?
CRCs related to complaints. I don't think I can answer that. First of all, am I missing anything in the history? Did anybody add anything to that? Did I misrepresent it? Okay, good. 54, I sometimes doubt my brain's ability to remember all the details, but.
That's why I disagreed, because I can't.
Yeah, well, and one other thing is you asked about why just the police. That was very intentional.
Right.
And there was conversation about, could this grow into something that, like, if I as a resident struggle with something that code is doing, is there a place for me to go? There are already systems in place for some of that. There is the ability for us to think beyond the police, but we really wanted to start there and figure out what this looks like. It's a very unique, police are working with the ability to do real physical harm to people, but like right? Like there is there's just a different sense that the police department carries than a code enforcement might or something else, but not suggesting that there isn't room. And that's quite honestly, the conversation later we're going to have about the role of the Human Relations Board. That is something that we should be doing, right? If people are having a challenge, to be a place that people can go and talk about those issues.
So how many CRCs are?
Do we know it, Chief or CRC?
Well, when Kimberly was saying how important it is we pick the right people for this, a lot depends upon the volume of work they're going to be given. Right. You know, and are they actually looking at every CRC? Is there a cutoff where it only goes to, those are some of the, I guess, devils in the details.
Yeah, well, Chief unmuted, he might have something to keep.
Certainly. It will vary, year to year. And there's a differentiation between a citizen complaint and then an internal investigation. Citizen complaint can turn into an internal, but an internal investigation does not necessitate that there was a citizen complaint. So those are two differentiating things. So when you're talking about a citizen complaint, it's handled in a couple of different ways. One, if it's a minor issue, say a citizen said the officer was rude to them on a traffic stop. That wouldn't necessarily rise to the level going to the Office of Professional Standards and being a full-blown citizens complaint where it's handled through the Office of Professional Standards. That type of incident and incidents like it would be handled at their immediate supervisors, so the sergeant or lieutenant level. Now, the same information is tracked, the same documentation is filled out. It's just so that we can track it, but it's not necessarily rising to the level of an investigation. Usually, it would have to have some type of either a significant accusation or the possibility of something higher than a written reprimand. So a suspension and or possible termination to rise to the Office of Professional Standards. So during any investigation, what can occur and what does occur is if that situation or information gleaned from that investigation would cause that the incident to rise to something higher than a minor offense, then the Office of Professional Standards would come in and take that investigation over, because that's the magnitude of that requires that level of investigation. As far as numbers, last year, I think we had 22 citizen complaints. Now, that's citizen complaints for 2022. So January 1st to December 31st of that year. Now, every year could be different. I don't have the data on where we are right now, but an average would be, you're probably going to average anywhere between the high teens to 25 or 30. But that would seem par for course. Now, that doesn't include internal investigations.
Right, okay, thank you, that's helpful. And just one more question, the Office of Professional Standards, is that a city department, or, I mean, is that a city owned, or is that within the police department?
I think it's probably with the state, chief.
No, so the Office of Professional Standards is within the Battle Creek Police Department. Most major law enforcement departments throughout this country, but assuredly throughout Southwest Michigan, has their own Office of Professional Standards. That office is led up by our lieutenant or inspector, Todd Elliott. Part of their duties and responsibilities are internal investigations, investigating major incidents involving citizen complaints, recruiting, hiring, policy review, accreditation. So it's not just handling, kind of the context of what we're discussing. They handle quite a bit within the organization. And they have training specific to in regards to administrative investigations and citizen complaints.
So the oversight board will be oversighting that department?
No, the oversight board. So here's a scenario in which the COB would become involved. So let's say there's a complaint made, an officer, whether it's whatever the complaint may be, then that complaint is reviewed, whether it's reviewed by a sergeant or if it's reviewed within the Office of Professional Standards. An investigation is done, a review of all pertinent body cams, in-car videos, witnesses, reports, all that would be done. The culmination on all the information gleaned through that investigation would then be looked at through the lens of departmental policy and procedure and relevant case law associated with the specifics of that incident. And then a determination would be made, recommendation from the Office of Professional Standards to me, the chief of police, about the determination, whether the complaint is sustained, exonerated, not sustained, unfounded. That information is then given to, when at the conclusion of that investigation, the citizen making that complaint is provided with the information, provided with the investigation, and then the determination in lieu. If that citizen decides that, okay, well, wait a minute, I disagree with this, and for whatever reason, then that person can appeal to the COB and request a reconsideration of the investigation. Then the COB would get involved in reviewing, making the determination if they're going to review it based upon the policies, procedures, and the facts and circumstances that would be laid out for the investigation. They would make a determination. Okay, yeah, we're going to review this. Then the COB would become involved, review all of the pertinent information, the investigation, and then they could make a recommendation to the city manager about the to reconsider the determination made by the chief, if the facts and circumstances support that.
And their power is limited to advisory, so they don't have any
I
authority.
see here, they don't have any authority, they
Yeah.
can't subpoena anyone, they can't conduct any independent investigation.
Right.
They can just get the information that has been already collected
Right.
and review that independently. Okay.
So I know that Jeffrey's got his hand up, but before then, just a point of
Sorry.
contact.
My apologies.
That's okay. Becca, Dina has come. You need to.
Yep, I made note of her and I did note that Jeff Cotton has joined.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. I wanted to make sure we captured that.
Yep.
Thank you. You're welcome. Jeffrey, hello. I see your hand up.
Hey, yeah, I just had a couple questions for the chief. How everybody doing? Sorry, I was late. Chief, I was wondering, one, is there any other process outside of a FOIA request to even get the background of one of your officers? For like using the example that you just used, maybe an officer has a history of, let's say, some racial discrimination or some racial accusations against them. Is there any process outside of the FOIA process that the citizens of Battle Creek could take to find out that information about an officer's background, for one? And my second question was, are you guys' officer handbook available to the public?
No, FOIA is the process in which you would have to apply. That's by law for that information. Now, if you're talking about information related to an employee jacket or employee file, everything is FOIA-able. Not everything could be released vis-a-vis FOIA. Discipline could be, but some information may not be. And that would be determined ultimately by our city attorney. Actually, our city clerk, I believe.
Thank you. And then he had a second question about the availability or access to the officer handbook.
You mean the training handbook?
No, don't you officers have a code of conduct handbook?
That's our policies and procedures. All of those are online. So you have departmental policies and procedures. Yeah, you can go right online and on a website and pull up any policy or procedure that you'd like.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you. Pashan? Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you. A couple of questions. Firstly, one to Chief Bagley. Currently, if somebody makes a complaint and they appeal, where do they do that? And then if that is in existence, then what does that happen to that process or function once the COB is established?
So currently there's several different avenues. One, they could always come back and appeal it to the chief's office or to the city manager's office for a second review. None of that would preclude that from happening with the system that we have in place right now. And sorry, your second question again?
That was the only one I have for you.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
But then my next one is for Kimberly. I was wondering, when you were at the NACOL conference, how was diversity of membership discussed, if at all? And then if you look at the way the membership is worded in the ordinance update that is proposed, there's nothing to prevent 5 old white men being elected, me being one of those. So was there any consideration that you saw in the wording of membership? And just wondering why that wasn't included at all, given that in the previous ordinance, even though that was from 1980, that seemed to be an over processed function. Thank you.
So at the conference, it was really across the board in regard to membership and how they were appointed and terms. Some boards didn't have terms. There was one person that had served on a board for 23 years. So it really ranged across the board. In regard to being specific about diversity, certainly that can be included in this description.
Would this be something, thank you for that, Pashan. Is that something that we would want to recommend then? And could it go in before Because this language, okay,
Yep.
so, Jen, do you have any recommendations of how that? How you'd like that?
I mean, I know that we've seen a lot of different examples where it can be specific to the point of impossible in terms of whoever is choosing a committee composition. And then if it's generalized, then how is that effective? In terms of that, we must ensure, some kind of diversity is reflected in the composition. And then that becomes subjective. So I don't really have any answers right now. I just noticed that there was a lack thereof of any kind of wording towards diversity. So I just wanted to raise it as a initial read through. It seemed that was not there.
I can propose some language through
That would be
email.
great.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
I'll do that before,
Before the December.
Yeah.
Would that go to all of us?
And then I had one
Yes.
other comment or two. So Kathy, you said that the board could move beyond just the police department in terms of its oversight capacity. And I'm wondering whether that should be included in the purpose now so that we don't have to then review the ordinance again. We could just put something in. And also the purpose, to me, purpose means why and the function is how. And it seems that the purpose of the committee is entirely reactive in terms of advising reconsideration of decisions that have already been made. In the function you have on bullet point 4, a proactive stance of improving communication and outreach. And I'm just wondering whether if we do want this committee to be proactive, that there can't be some type of wording included in the purpose as to why this committee even exists or why this board exists. And in just rather than the purpose or the why being completely reactive, that we include some language there in a proactive stance.
Yeah, I think it's a really good recommendation.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you for picking up on that. That's doable for you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I also wonder, Jeffrey, is your hand up
Can-
again or? I'm sorry, Rebecca. Oh, no, he just took it down. Okay, go on, Rebecca.
I just wanted to add, I think right now, the other reason that we are focusing just on the police department is this is an amendment to a chapter that it was already in existence that was very specific. But when we talked about this early on, we knew that there was probably a good potential that it could be utilized for other areas within the city, and that could still be part of a consideration going forward. I think this one is probably going to remain very specific to police because we chose to amend an already existing ordinance and not create a new one, if that makes sense.
I think that's good.
Thank
I was a
you.
little flipping my language about that. Thank you. I do wonder, and this is just me, spitballing here. I don't know if it's gonna land. But when we think about the composition of such a board, do we look at the demographics within the community and at least have the lowest benchmark of making sure that it's representative of our city demographics? I know that doesn't get at the other diversity that you're speaking of, Kimberly, which I think is incredibly valuable as well. But I've been thinking about this a lot for even just the HRB and how we have parts of our community that are not represented in this room, and I think it does us a disservice. And so thinking through that lens of just who we have here and are they represented in a way that is meaningful. So just a suggestion to think about.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for all your hard work. For those of you who can attend, I can't be there on December 5th. I'm really sad. But anybody who can be there, please do. I'm assuming that is it prior to a commission meeting? So it's at 5:30? Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, back to our agenda. Any updates on the language access beyond what we discussed at the last meeting? Kimberly?
No,
Okay.
no.
All right. Okay, we're going to new business now, and we've talked briefly and very informally last month, for those of you who attended, about the time and duration of this meeting. 60 minutes goes really, really quickly. We have a lot typically to cover. I know that 4 o'clock is even hard for people to get here. I'm curious, I want to put this to the city first. What are our limitations based on when we can have this meeting? Like, if we're in this space, how late can we go? Is there a limit on that?
For city staff to participate, it's a 5 o'clock limitation. We have other boards and commissions that understand that, and they will do the business that they need city there in that first hour. And if they have additional items they wish to discuss, they can continue that conversation. But mindful of staff's time as well, that's just something that we put into place because we had meetings that were running like an hour over. And it just made it really difficult to get everybody there from a staff perspective.
Okay, thank you. So just anything we'd have to move on that would be formal business, and then we'd have to conclude the meeting at 5. If we wanted to continue, we could, but it would be not something that was recorded. Or would it, that also with Open Meetings Act, would that have to be available, the full meeting? I'm assuming so.
Yes, because again, this is a hard one because this is an advisory board. And so you're not subject to the Open Meetings Act, but because of, the new processes we put in place during the during COVID times, this has been really helpful. And we've received feedback that people like to have the opportunity to go back and look at meetings from a recording perspective, but we don't air these live. So, you know what I mean? We make this available at a later time. So again, this is an advisory board. So you're right. We would stop recording at 5, but you could continue to act in an advisory capacity. It just wouldn't be, it wouldn't be recorded.
Okay. So for us then, our decision-making is, it feels like, well, I don't want to make any assumptions. If we started at 3:30 and went till 5, it gives us 90 minutes. I don't know what a burden that would place on folks who have to leave work and get here. And we have a lot of folks that aren't here right now. The other option is we continue with our 4 o'clock start time, but we go till 5:30 if the meeting requires it. Like we do all of our business before 5 o'clock and then commit to staying half an hour if we need any additional time. Anybody have any thoughts or recommendations? Anybody perfectly fine with the 60 minutes and think that we're fine? No, Chuck's saying no. It feels like we really get rushed.
Yeah. But I also don't work anymore, so I will acquiesce to
This
it.
is Chuck's job, just volunteering in other places.
This is Kiona. Thank you for raising the question. I'm supportive of the 90 minutes and just ask if we, as Rebecca had stated, that we just make the best use of the first hour. And then in addition to that, just would like to request if we could, I know today may have been a one-off, I do understand that, but if we could get any critical documents, any information that we need to read over prior to, because I honestly have spent the greater part of this hour reading over what we've been discussing today, because I do work during the day as well, and oftentimes work through my lunch break. So I feel like I'm playing catch up instead of utilizing this hour to be productive and tuned in as I would have liked. So if we could just make a conscious effort of us getting any reading materials, any prep work a couple days prior to would greatly be appreciated too.
Thanks, Kiana. Noted. Jeffrey and then Derek.
I was gonna say that I was cool with the 60 or the 90 minutes, but also if there was I think it would help if there was some type of online portal for communication, for constant communication and document uploading, right? So if it was somewhere like that, maybe a Slack channel or something like that, where if we did, like Kiana said, if she had some free time and she wanted to check some documents, she knew exactly where to go to find them and not necessarily just, piled up in the emails or saved to our phones or our files. Maybe we could get some type of online communication and then we could maybe rush through the meetings a little faster. Just a suggestion though.
Thanks. So since we're advisory, I don't think there's any issues with us being able to create a Google folder for this group. Would there be, Rebecca?
You know what, that, again, I'm gonna defer to the city attorney on that one, only because, you know, the information that's come out of it, even if it's advisory or recommendation, still becomes a document of the city. So I think it's a great suggestion. I want to make sure that is okay.
Okay.
And I'd
we'll
have to
get
work
back
with our comms team or IT about what that would look like. Because again, if we do, yeah, there's just a lot of other questions. I think they're great suggestions, just need to take them through some people who are smarter in those areas than I am.
Thanks. I agree. I think that having to comb through, like, who from the city sent that to me and when you want to go back and track documents gets a little onerous. So I appreciate the suggestion. Thank you, Jeffrey. There.
Just want to put my input in on the fact of, yes, 60 to 90 minutes is great for me. I would rather have it at the tail end of the meeting. So starting still at 4 to 5:30 due to the fact that this is work hours. And then I would just say that we need to start utilizing our time more as far as the agenda. We have been talking probably about 45 minutes on one topic so far, which that's what's going to happen, but we just got to make sure that like whatever's on the agenda we try to get to and it makes sense. I feel like the topic already would have already been 45 minutes, so it's like that would have been the only topic for today. But yeah, so just utilizing of the time that we do have, whether it's 60 or 90 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Derek. I think, it's a delicate balancing act, right? You get some really quality conversation and you don't want to cut it off, but you also know you have other things that you have to accomplish. And with that, I know that we've only got a few minutes left. I wanted to give an opportunity. Do we need a motion to change the meeting time from 4 to 5:30? Is that something that we have to take action on? Okay, could somebody
Yes.
make a motion to move that?
I move we change our meeting time from 4 PM to 5:30.
All right, Chuck has made the motion.
Second.
Okay, we've got 2 seconds, so I think that's good. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. Opposed, same. Okay, so starting at our next meeting, we will plan on 4 to 5:30. We will do all of our city, everything that we have to do as a function of this board before 5 o'clock, and then continue any conversation we need afterwards. We will be mindful of our time as well as we can. And Kimberly, I just wanted to give you a minute. I know it's not going to be a lot of time to really share with the group, even briefly, what you learned from the city of Jackson. And I think maybe then we parking lot this to our next conversation about the role of the HRB, given the existence of the DEI office now. And like, is there room for us to be rethinking our scope and our focus and our connection to the DEI office?
So at one of the previous meetings, there was conversation around what the future of the Human Relations Board would be now that a DEI office has been formed, and would the efforts be duplicative? And so I've been doing my own research of other communities that have human relations boards or commissions, and talked with one of my colleagues in Jackson that has a human relations commission, of course, DEI office and committee, and a racial equity committee. And he just delineated the focus of each of those and talked about how they complement each other. I don't know that I can do it justice in this time. I would probably prefer to forward out the email or something condensed that would give people time to reflect.
So this is just some seed planting for a discussion in January. The idea of, and that this is on the agenda, is just what is our role and our scope. And I think that we can give it the time it deserves in January. And hopefully by then we'll also know where we stand on the COB. So we should be able to at least kind of set aside a lot of that really voluminous conversation we have about that. Okay, thank you, Kimberly. You have your 2024 meeting schedule in front of you. It's part of the packet. Just mark your calendars, know that it'll be till 5:30. I really appreciate the hybrid opportunity. I do love seeing people in person. If there are opportunities for you to make it, it'd be great to see some of you when we can make that happen. I don't think we really have time for the points of interest. We'll go back to that before. I want to make sure we get the public comments. Are there any public comments?
Kathy, do we have to motion to
Yeah.
approve the calendar? No.
Oh, thank you.
I move that we I move that we accept the 2024 schedule as presented.
Thank you. All right, all in favor of accepting the 2024 calendar, say aye.
Aye.
All right, all
Aye.
opposed, say.
Aye.
Aye.
That was- Yeah, that was in favor. A little delay, yeah. Opposed, same? Okay, now we're good. All right, the calendar passes. Thank you very much for catching that. And any public comments? We only got one public in here, and I don't think anybody's online. So anything? You good? All right.
He threatened me. If I said no.
Oh,
I don't know if this is the right place, but, or time, but I had mentioned last meeting about the Uptown Institute report on Battle Creek.
yes.
And I sent a copy to Rebecca, and I was hoping that, we could make sure every member got a copy of this report. This report is awesome. I mean, they lay out specifically the Battle Creek, the population, the age and household type, the education and workforce projections, employment, income, community patterns, okay? Housing, and they do a very good job of reviewing race and ethnicity in Battle Creek. And this was commissioned by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation in 2022, so it's not an old report. But we really need to look at this and just have that baseline data with all of the wealth of knowledge all of us have on the committee. I think it would be very beneficial.
Rebecca, is that
Can I just
report
Well, she indicated she sent it to me. Can you tell me when that was sent? I mean, even just the day, was it like last week or?
Yeah, it was last week, week before this meeting, because I wanted to see if we could get it.
Because I received
Right.
something from you today, but I haven't had a chance to open it.
Okay, well, that was what I sent you a week ago. I just resent it.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
Yeah, because
So-
I didn't receive, yeah, I have it. And I think
Yeah.
what you're asking me, is it to be distributed to the HRB? I can do that. I have it from
Okay.
your email today, but I don't have an email prior to that.
and really look at it in color. I only have a black and white printer, but if you get it in color, it's really, really interesting.
All right, so we can, though, for those of you who are interested, let's commit to reading that before our January meeting. I also think it might be really beneficial, given the recommendation I made about the composition of the COB board, to really kind of take a look at that and see what does that tell us about who we might wanna be looking at. Okay, we've got like 3 minutes. Any other, board comments?
Okay, I have one,
Yes.
just kind of circling back to the time and duration of the meeting. We've done this off and on in our private planning meetings, so we have a lot to go through and an hour to do it in. We've said, okay, the welcome is gonna take 3 minutes, and approval of minutes is gonna take 1 minute, and this next section, okay, we've got this to talk about, we're gonna give it 30 minutes, and we're gonna hit it hard, in 30 minutes, we're done, we're moving on to the next thing, and I don't know, that may help, that may not, but an idea to think about.
Any other board comments?
Just like to say hello to everyone and wishing you a happy holiday season coming up. And we do have a Kwanzaa event coming up on December the 30th. And so I'm sending out invitations for all of our city staff. Everyone coming to Battle Creek Kwanzaa coming.
So we'll get that to my city staff. I'll get one too through this email. Okay, good.
Especially on the groups that I'm associated with.
Oh, thank you very much.
I love that.
All right, well, I wish everyone a happy and safe holiday. I hope everybody feels loved and safe and full, if that's what you like to do, is eat. And I'm gonna adjourn us at 4:59.30 seconds. And thank you all very much for your continued commitment. Take care.